think it was really like certifying through B Corp, which highlighted for us like how much gold is, like being in fashion jewelry. I have to say, didn't really come top of mind when we thought about sustainability. So when we, went through the B Corp certification process, we understood that kind of transparency in the gold supply chain was a top priority. It felt super daunting and very challenging for a business our size. We are a very small company. And so we thought, oh, wow, we have our hand in the mining business. So it didn't even occur to us. And so it was one of those things that it felt daunting, like you said. It paralysis by analysis. We didn't know where to start. We didn't know what to do. I thought, I'm not a bench jeweler that's buying little bars of gold where I can go and ask someone where did this come from. So we kind of did what you need to do. We had to start. So we started speaking with our plating manufacturer partners in South Korea, which we have a lot of like long-standing relationships. And we just started to ask, where do you get your gold from? And, and a lot of times they were really like shocked. They're like, nobody has ever asked for it. And I think that was, it was a little bit disheartening because they weren't, they were like, oh, here, we've got the certification that you need. But at the same time, it really showed how important it is to be the ones asking those questions, because not a lot of people are, and we're talking, we have our relationships, but these are large-ish, I guess, gold plating manufacturers that do this for a living. And the fact that nobody has ever asked them where their gold comes from, it encourages us that okay, we are making a difference here. And this is in a small way, the way that we're going to make a change and make some waves and make some noise. So Leslie was always, I really, really appreciate her support because I speak Korean and I do all the manufacturing and the production. But it is my second language. So to be asking difficult questions to stakeholders who have much larger businesses than us, we're the small little customer asking these big questions, it felt a little bit like David and Goliath at the moment where, we're asking for big things, but it was important. And, so Leslie would always stand behind me and say, we gotta, we don't need the answer. We don't need that certificate in a month. And to say that we've done it and we're done. It's like you mentioned earlier, it's really just starting and then you have to keep going. And so over the last couple of years, we've learned a lot. South Korea produces a lot of their own gold, which is reassuring to us because all of the answers we were getting is we use Korean gold. And, through my research, just in general about where does conflict gold come from? What are the actual issues? Knowing that most of our suppliers are using Korean gold is reassuring because the largest refinery in Korea is actually listed on the London Bullion Market Association. So they have a good delivery list, which outlines ethical suppliers of gold. So you kind of piecing together bits of information and putting it together because nobody's going to come to you and say, here it is, you're done. Here's your certificate. And so it is pounding the pavement and finding those answers. And even, today's podcast with you, it's constant reminders of hey, let's brush up, let's find out more information. And it just never ends.
I think what is so important is bringing your suppliers, your whole value chain along with you. So how have you navigated that? It sounds like this particular supplier, you're able to have those conversations. For other suppliers, you feel like it's a conversation and you're bringing it to them? Or what does that look like to be collaborative and trying to raise everybody up all together?
It feels good. I think a lot of them at first, they get a little bit resistant. They get their backs up because they think that they're either doing something wrong or you're looking for something to catch them in something. And then when you really come together and they find the answer that oh, we're getting Korean gold or whatnot, I think it's just enlightening for them. You kind of collectively breathe the sigh of relief that, you've come to the same conclusion. The thing that can happen is like nobody likes to feel stupid. So when you ask people questions that they don't know the answer to, you can kind of get defensive or uncomfortable. And I think we have probably felt that way at points in the business. I remember like years ago, someone like messaged, like commented on an Instagram post being like, where do you get your gold from? And it was like in the early days of our business, and Elaine and I were like, how do we even answer that question? That's a lot. But like, I think we're getting, you said humility or being humble. Like, I think we're getting better at being like, you know what, that's a great question and I should figure that out. And it's going to take some work. And so I think when we encounter that same resistance or discomfort from our suppliers, it feels familiar and we can be like, no, we've been there. It's okay. This is hard. Let's figure it out together.
I'm sure part of your journey also, and many companies, is looking at packaging. I think it's also a very hot topic right now. I know that there have been different iterations that Lovers Tempo has considered over the years. Is that something that you feel like you've had progress on and that you can share with our listeners?
Yeah, I mean, the packaging piece is definitely the one I think that has the most optics. Like people really look to that right away. You're looking, you're getting an order from wherever online and you're hoping that you can recycle all the pieces of the puzzle and you don't want a bunch of waste. I think there's a lot of consumer awareness on that point. And since before I was even a part of Lovers Tempo, paper packaging has always been our standard because of its ability to be recycled. So again, that's kind of just one of the great values that Elaine had already baked into the company that's carried forward. Recently, we've transitioned all of our paper packaging to be FSC certified recycled paper wherever possible, and making sure that all of our like larger packaging, like boxes for shipments and things like that, contain recycled content. So that was a mission of the last couple of years. And then the other packaging piece is if you ever come into our warehouse, you will see that there are thousands upon thousands of small poly bags that contain all of the jewelry, which is unfortunately a necessary evil because with fashion jewelry, it does need to be not exposed to oxygen in order for the product to stay looking good and sellable. So we've been on a quest to find the perfect replacement for single-use plastics there. There's a lot of packaging products that get sold with labels on them that are phony and really mean nothing and are just still plastic, even though they say something nice on it. Elaine, the value of abundant thinking that we have, the being curious, like we're really never satisfied with just checking the box. It's like, we really want to know why. Well, why is this better? Why is this biodegradable? So Elaine definitely went on a mission to get to the bottom of that and found a product that is bio-based and biodegradable that we feel really good about to migrate all that.
It's so important to dive in deeper on some of those claims. And one of the ways to do that is certainly to align with different certifications available. And we mentioned B Corp at the top, but I definitely want to dive into because our listeners write in with a lot of questions. So I want to pick your brain on that, but there are a couple of others that you've aligned to. One that I'm actually less familiar with, and I would love for you to share, which is that you're a living wage employer. So I can kind of read between the lines as to what this means, but I would love for you to share a little bit more as to why you've chosen to make that part of the process and what has that even looked like as a journey for your organization.
Yeah, so living wage employer is is kind of a movement sort of thing similar to B Corp. Obviously, you can probably, as you said, read between the lines and understand what it is, but a minimum wage standard exists on a government level, but it really doesn't account for the reality of what it costs to live in any particular community. And the cost of living fluctuates whether you live in Vancouver, where we live, or if you live in Calgary or Toronto or Montreal or, anywhere rural. There's like a big difference in like what life costs there. And so we have always kind of had an ethos of like, we should pay people well so that they are content to be living here and working for our company and feeling really good about their lives. But through the B Corp certification process, we were introduced to the idea of the living wage movement, which is a body that evaluates what it costs to live within a particular area and sets a fair living wage. So it's much higher than the minimum wage. I believe minimum wage in BC is around like $15, $16. The living wage in Vancouver is almost $26, or it's over $26. It's around $26. So it's a significant jump.
from what the bare minimum is to what people should really be paid in order to be comfortably living. So again, this is one of those values that kind of existed in the company before we discovered that there was a name for it and that it was this, and now we can certify with that. So all of our employees have to be paid a fair living wage for where we operate our business, and our independent contractors as well. So that's kind of our bare minimum of what we pay people, which is $10 an hour over the bare minimum wage, according to the government. Another certification that you worked with is going towards carbon neutrality. And I believe the organization you worked with is Carbon Zero. And I work very deep in the emissions space. I'm always very curious to find out more as to what the processes look like for individuals and companies, because it can certainly feel very daunting when you look at all of the different factors as to where our emissions come from. So what has that looked like for Lovers Tempo? How did you get started, and what have you learned along the way in terms of your emissions?
Well, when we worked with the independent kind of consultant to get a bird's eye view of sustainability in our business overall, carbon neutrality came up as a goal to work towards. And so when we decided that becoming carbon neutral certified was an objective, we first wanted to find a partner to accomplish that was a Canadian company, because we like to support other Canadian businesses whenever possible. And we also wanted them to be using the way that carbon, I'm sure you know, but the way that carbon neutrality organizations work is that they take the money that you give them and they invest in things that are going to remove carbon from the atmosphere. So we wanted to work with an organization that was doing projects like that within Canada, which again then made more jobs and more opportunity and helped our local economy. So we found Carbon Zero. They've been an amazing partner, and if you're looking for someone to certify with, I would highly recommend them. And the process is an annual basis. After our fiscal year ends, we're doing our accounting year end and we're doing our carbon year end at the same time. So it takes about 7 weeks, a couple of hours a week, a few team members and myself. We have to catalog everything in the business, from what our products are made out of, to how they are shipped in and out of our office, to how our employees get to and from work every day, because all of those things are the business's demands that create carbon. So it's a lot of data entry and a lot of spreadsheets, which is totally my favorite part of business, is the spreadsheet part. But it's been really enlightening.
To get to an organization that we've mentioned a couple of times, so B Corp. This is one that has come up certainly with a couple of previous guests, but again, as I mentioned, our listeners seem really interested, and I think it's because how much credibility B Corp has, regardless of what industry you're in. So it's been a couple of years that you've been working with them. Maybe what made you choose to work with B Corp, and then what has that process looked like?
We learned about B Corp when I was just kind of standing on the school playground talking to somebody randomly, watching my kid climb on a slide. I hadn't heard of the B Corp movement at all before, but I was talking to a parent of one of my children and telling them about the way that Elaine and I run our business and the things that we believe in and things that we value, because I'm very proud of it. And they were like, "Oh, are you a B Corp?" And I was like, "What's that? What do you mean?" And so Elaine and I have always kind of used the word, we want to do business better. That's kind of the way that we described it when we first became business partners and tried to align on values. But once I heard that the way that we were doing business actually had like a whole movement that people wanted to do business better like we do, then I kind of became obsessed. I'm a hyper fixation person, and so B Corp became like my obsession for a bit. And it was great because there's so much subjectivity to better, right? If Elaine and I think we're doing something better because we feel that way, but like, who are we to discern whether we are or not? So like finding that there was this like movement with these rigorous standards of like what it is to be better, and that aligned with what our values were, was really exciting.
Yeah, I was gonna say, like, I had heard about B Corp before, but it always, as a very small business, you kind of always think that that's for other people.
you kind of always just assume, like, you see B Corp and you associate it with like Patagonia or, like the bigger name. And I think that Leslie was the one that, like, as she said, she gets hyper focused. She looked into it and realized that, it's for all businesses. And we were already doing a lot of the things, which is kind of like, it made sense for us to like go for it. And when it started, for me, it was always, I always have like that imposter syndrome because I started the business like from my, basement suite apartment making jewelry, like, in my kitchen. And so I kind of always just thought, oh my God, that's not for us. And, it's through these process, like just the certification process. And like we said, like, knocking on doors and asking about gold and asking these big questions, like it daunting, but then it also gives you the confidence because it's, it breaks it down and you learn. And it's not like they're not asking for the world right away. We took how long was it, Leslie? 2 to 3 years to get through the process to actually be ready to like submit our application and, check all the things that we needed to do. And it's like 2 to 3 years of asking questions and building our business to be certified. And it takes time, but it was so worth it because we learned so much along the way. And we had a framework, and that's the beauty of it, is you're not alone. Like, you're given a framework, you're given guidance every step of the way. And so it was really important in even just forming business practices, not just, sustainable practices. They kind of went hand in hand. So
the framework is useful too, because it almost helps you relax a little bit, because when you don't have the framework, you're kind of like, nothing is ever enough, I have to find, but it can be really overwhelming. Whereas when you have that structure, you can kind of go like, okay, I am doing these things and I feel really good about it. These are some things I should be here, and I'm here, and I got to work on that. But it gives you some, like, it's not as flaily and subjective. It's like concrete, and you can work towards it. The other thing I want to speak to you about it is, you said, I can't remember the word you used, but there's a lot of different certifications out there, and like they all have kind of different value. I think that's something to be leery of as a consumer, is like know what there's a lot of labels they can put on products that actually mean nothing. And B Corp isn't one of them. And that was something that we really wanted to make sure of when we were pursuing this certification, is like, we get emails sometimes from people be like, hey, do you want to buy a I'm the best business award? It's for sale. Like, there's a lot of BS out there. So just make sure that if you're going to invest the dollars and the time and the energy into a certification, that it is something that has rigor and authenticity to what it's doing. One thing that I love that you had on your website, because I care a lot about the end of life of our products, and you have something called the Full Circle Program. Can you share what this is and just the details? Because I was digging into it a little bit, and I just think it's so innovative and certainly something that you don't see in the space. If you could share more about that.
The Full Circle Artist Program really did come from addressing that aspect, end of life of our product. And as Leslie mentioned, like, we are in jewelry. We're not creating a ton of waste. Our product is quite small. We learned that, most people don't just like throw jewelry in the garbage. They donate it. They give it to friends. So we felt really good about that, except we wanted to have an answer to like, what is the end of life of our product and how can we use that to complete the cycle. But also we kind of wanted to engage, like, art has always been near and dear to my heart. I started this company as a creative and always kind of felt like that was the core of like what we do is we are creative and artistic in our endeavors. And so we thought, what a cool way to kind of address both things through one program. So we thought about, okay, so what if we could, sponsor an artist, a local artist, to use some of our end of life, either supplies, materials, or jewelry itself that's been damaged by consumers or during the manufacturing process, to spark conversations about sustainability, end of life, consumerism, but also to kind of put that twist on it and talk about arts and being creative. Because I think sustainability sometimes, like, being in this, an entrepreneur with our values in sustainability, it feels heavy sometimes. There's a lot of work that can be done. There's always more to do. And at the end of the day, though, like we kind of wanted to do something that made it feel more approachable. And also just to support artists. Like, we live in Vancouver. It's much like Montreal, a very big, vibrant, creative community. And so we just kind of thought it would be the perfect blend of like some of our values. And it has been an incredible experience for everyone. I think, people who work in our company, they love the experience of, we do the call out, we get the applications, we get to see so many cool artists that are in our area when they go and they submit their application. And then we get to go through the process of working with them for a year. We get to see their faces when they pick up the materials and they, they're like, oh my gosh, it was like Christmas, and I opened the boxes and saw the, it's just so cool. Then from their perspective, it's been really neat to see how excited they get. They love kind of challenging themselves with like working with a completely new material. It's just a way, it's a time for them to kind of flex their creative muscles as well. So it was kind of just like an idea that I had, and it's been a really beautiful part of our journey in terms of sustainability, because it allows us also to kind of broach that conversation with our customers in a more natural way, because we're talking about our product. Sometimes it feels like, again, like there's great companies out there like Tentree, where their whole mission and brand and product is kind of rooted in sustainability. And for us in the beginning, it felt like we were a bit out of left field, being like, oh, we're a fashion jewelry brand where we just make products. And it felt like, how do we come across this conversation in a more natural, authentic way? Because there's who we are as people, but then who we are as a brand. And it felt a little bit like greenwashy to be a brand that all of a sudden started speaking about sustainability, even though it wasn't as natural and apparent in our overall brand, brand voice. So I think the Full Circle artist program really was kind of like the key moment where we were like, this is the way we can really incorporate so many different values that we have, speak about sustainability from a very authentic place, and kind of inject it into our communication in a way that felt really like authentic and approachable to our customer, that didn't feel so daunting and heavy.